awesome one too.
Good job, Adam.
All right, the A-team, the Stars. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and now open and call to order the special council meeting of Tracy City Council for Wednesday, August 26th, or 28th at 6:30 PM. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we apologize for the delay, technical difficulties. I think we got that worked out. I need approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
First and second. Any additions or comments? Move to vote.
Teagues?
Aye.
Tell?
Aye.
Shunts? Aye. Mayor Dimmers?
Aye. Procedure or approval of the agenda is approved. So the item tonight is the procedure to consider removal of EDA board member Tony Peterson. Mr. Gross, do you want to open up?
Thank you. Did all the council members receive my memo dated August 21st, 2018, and have an opportunity to review that?
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions before I proceed with just a quick summary of the procedure that we'll follow tonight? Okay. So, as indicated by Mr. Mayor, today's hearing is for the removal hearing of EDA member Tony Peterson. The council voted to schedule this hearing on August 12th, 2019. Mr. Peterson was served a copy of the written charges and accompanying exhibits on August 15, 2019. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute 469.095, Subdivision 5, before a EDA member can be removed, the council must hold a hearing in which the subject of the charges has the opportunity to contest and present evidence to the council before the council makes any decision. As indicated, there are 3 charges that have been alleged against EDA member Tony Peterson. They are included in the notice of written charges for removal. The evidence that we presented tonight will include the 27 exhibits that were included in that packet that the council should have received, and any testimony that will be presented this evening. As indicated in the memo, the council's responsibility is to listen to the evidence, make findings based upon that evidence, and weigh that evidence to the substantial evidence test to determine whether each and every one of the charges have been substantiated by the evidence applying that test. If the council finds one of the charges to be substantiated, then it must remove EDA member Tony Peterson. If it finds none of the charges have been substantiated, then the council, or Mr. Peterson must remain on the EDA board. After the public hearing and all the evidence is concluded, then the council will be tasked with determining and deliberating the evidence and discussing and make the determination on the charges and whether they've been substantiated or not. The only question I have is, Mr. Peterson, do you have any exhibits that you wish to introduce to the council besides the exhibits that were included?
Everything that you got in the package is all I have. I mean,
Okay. And then the way the hearing will proceed is that the witnesses supporting the allegations will testify first. I believe the only witness that would do so tonight would be Mr. Ambiel. Then, Mr. Peterson, you would have the opportunity to testify yourself and present any witnesses that you may wish to present. After you're concluded, then the hearing would be concluded, and then we would proceed with deliberation. Any questions before, or any questions on the procedure? I have nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We review each allegation? Is that
Correct.
correct? Yes. Just want to be sure. Okay, so moving on, we'll review the allegations. Allegation 1 is a violation of Fair Credit Reporting. It is alleged that you violated 604F of the Fair Credit Reporting Act by obtaining and using a background report, a consumer report from truthfinder.com on James Matson for a prohibited purpose. Allegation 2 is a violation of City Code 2.30 Subdivision 2. It is alleged that you did not carry out impartially the laws of the nation, state, and municipality by obtaining a background report from truthfinder.com on James Matson. Allegation 3 is violation of City Code 2.30 Subdivision 3. It is alleged that you exceeded your authority and your position as an EDA board member by ordering a background investigation report on James Matson from truthfinder.com without EDA board approval or authority. Do you have any questions on that?
Nope.
At this time, we can move on to Mr. Ambule.
Mr. Ambule, have him sworn in, Diane.
Do you swear to tell the truth, so help you God?
I do. What?
Yep.
My name is Chris Ambule. I'm the former city administrator for Tracy, Minnesota. On June 5th, James Matson came to the EDA board meeting to request to buy 106 3rd Street in Tracy. He also wished to get a loan from the EDA to put a roof on that building. On June 18th, I received a background report for James Matson from Tracy City Council member and EDA board member Tony Peterson. Mr. Peterson expressed that he paid for the report on his own and asked me to share it with the rest of the EDA board. After reviewing the report provided by Mr. Peterson, specifically the statement on the second page, you may not use any information obtained from this report in connection with determining a prospective candidate's suitability for, there are multiple items, but item number 2 was credit and/or loans. I did not forward this report even though he requested, as I felt it violated the federal, state, and local laws to do so. This background check was not part of the EDA loan guidelines, was not authorized by James Matson, and I was unable to find a time where this had ever been pulled on an EDA revolving loan fund applicant before. Keeping the City of Tracy's best interests in mind, I reached out to both the City Attorney Matt Gross and League of Minnesota Cities Help Desk. I was instructed by both experts that I could only share information that I could verify as public information and that I was able to confirm myself, but that sharing the report puts the city at risk. After spending hours on the phone, I was able to confirm 2 major points from the report that was relevant to the upcoming EDA board decisions. I shared those findings with the EDA board via an email at 4:39 on June 18, 2019. At 5:03 that same evening, Tony Peterson sent me an email questioning why I did not share the report with the rest of the EDA board. On June 19th, the sale of the property and loan to James Matson died by lack of second motion. That was after a long and lengthy discussion by former EDA board member Mark Seeger over a background report which he received from former EDA board member Jeff Salmon. It has been established during the public hearing held on July 24th, 2019 that not only did Jeff Salmon forward this unauthorized background check to Mark Seeger, but that Jeff Salmon received this report from Tony Peterson. Over the weeks that followed and through the process of the removal of EDA board from the EDA board of his employer Jeff Salmon, Tony Peterson repeatedly pressured to have this complaint filed by James Matson removed and any council action canceled. In all instances, and in order to protect the city City Attorney Matt Gross was referred to on how the city should proceed. This process, no matter how unpleasant in public, followed Minnesota State Statute and Tracy City Code.
I have a few follow-up questions, Mayor, if I may proceed.
Yes, go ahead.
So Mr. Ambule, included in the packet are exhibits 1 through 4. Have you reviewed those before?
Yes, sir.
And are those the EDA board minutes from June 5th, 2019, June 12th, 2019, June 19th, 2019, and July 3rd, 2019?
Yes, that's correct.
And you've reviewed those, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And did you attend some or all of those meetings?
The only one out of there I didn't attend was the June 5th one. I was not at that meeting. I reviewed it later by the recordings.
And to the best of your recollection, exhibits 1 through 4, those minutes from those meetings, are they accurate?
Yes,
So on June 5th, 2019, did Mr. Mattson appear at the EDA board meeting?
on June 5th?
Yes.
Yes,
And is that the time in which he had made the request to the EDA to buy the building and also a loan to repair the roof?
yes.
And after June 5th, 2019, did Mr. Mattson complete and submit a loan application to the EDA?
After June 5th?
Yes.
He submitted it at that one, and he had to do some rework on it and fill in some more columns, but yes, it was submitted again afterwards.
Okay. And in the packet, would that reflect exhibit number 16, the application that Mr. Mattson completed and submitted to the EDA?
Yes.
And who signed that application?
James Mattson, and I believe, and his wife,
Lisa.
Lisa Mattson. Sorry, I was having trouble reading it.
And what date was included on that application?
6/8/19 by both parties.
And did the EDA board obtain a credit or background report on the Mattsons?
The credit report that was provided by EDA guidelines was provided by Mr. Mattson.
Okay, so the EDA board itself did not obtain that report.
No,
Did the EDA board authorize anyone else to obtain a credit or background report on Mr. Mattson or Lisa Mattson?
no,
On June 18, 2019, you indicated that Mr. Peterson had informed you that he personally paid for and obtained that background check on Mr. Mattson.
yes.
And did he indicate why he did that?
Yeah, he stated that he does his homework, and it was in the email. He stated that although he felt this was going to go through, he wanted to be on record stating that I'm sorry, not on record, but that he was against it.
And you previously indicated in your statement that he had requested that you forward and share that with the remaining members of the board.
Correct.
And you had some email conversations with Mr. Peterson from the period in which this loan and purchase of property came up, is that right?
Correct.
And are those reflected in exhibits 5 through 15?
Yes.
Okay, so those reflect the conversations you had with Mr. Peterson in relation to this matter involving the Mattson loan and the EDA?
Correct.
Are you aware if Mr. Peterson made any independent investigations to confirm the accuracy of the information included in that background or credit report?
No.
Did you yourself make any investigation of that background report?
Yes, I called multiple parties from the thing. I spent roughly 3 to 4 hours on it, trying to come up with verification based on the advice that I was given on that. I made some phone calls, and I later shared information that I was able to substantiate with the EDA board members in an email. That was the email that was at 4:39 on June 18th.
And did you yourself find any inaccuracies contained in the report that were not there?
That were not there?
Or any inaccuracies different from what were included in the report?
No, there was a lot I was unable to verify. I couldn't find it in a public format.
Okay. Was there any information that was different from what your investigation revealed?
No.
Okay. And did you also investigate and research the company that prepared this credit or background report?
Yes, truthfinder.com.
And how did you investigate that?
First thing I did was went to their site. And initially when I opened up the site, there's a warning about not using that for credit purposes, credit seeking purposes, loans, things like that. And then when you enter the site, then it's, you pay a fee and then you can take background checks on, I believe it was, I can't remember the fee, but it was, you could pull so many for 30 days.
Okay. So the notice that you just referenced, would that be exhibit number 22 in the packet?
Yes.
Okay. And looking at the credit report itself that was obtained by Mr. Peterson, was there any disclaimer or notice provided on page 2 of that report?
In fact, that's all page 2 is a disclaimer to expressed that it can't be used for multiple purposes, and specifically the one that I noted earlier in my statement was credit and/or loans.
And is that page 2 of Exhibit 21 in the packet?
Yes.
And did you also look at the website concerning some of the information about truthfinder.com?
Which website? Are you talking about Truthfinder's its own website?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
And would exhibit number 23 reflect some of the information that's contained on their website?
Yes.
And on page 13 of exhibit 23, does that support your investigation that it indicated that you cannot use Truthfinder to verify someone's credit history or balance in their eligibility for loans?
Yes.
And based upon your investigation, you did not forward that any further to the EDA in relation to that report? You did not forward that to the EDA, right?
Correct. I declined to forward it.
I have no further questions. The council, if they have any questions, feel free to ask Mr. Ambulo.
Hi, anybody? We can reserve the right to ask if they come in, I mean,
Certainly, you can recall Mr. Ambulo if
Yes.
there's additional information.
okay, so we don't have anything at this time.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes, I have some questions for Chris. Exhibit number 5, you had mentioned earlier in your testimony that email requested you to share that background report with the rest of the members of the board.
No, I didn't state that. I stated that you did request that day. That was verbally by phone call.
And who called who on that? sir?
I called you.
And I told you to share it. You didn't tell me you didn't say to me that I think we should share this, and I said, you do what you want with it? You don't remember the conversation that way?
I remember the conversation of you saying that that should be shared with the rest of the board.
And I left it in your decision. I didn't ask you to. I said it should be. They should
Your
be privy
exact words were that you could not share it with the rest of the board and that I should.
if you wished. Not that I was telling you to.
That's not how I remember it, no.
That's how I remember it. It was you who called me, not me who called you.
That's
And then the
correct, I
other-
did call you.
Excuse me?
That's correct, I did call you
Yes.
after I received the email.
And the other email you referenced was number 6, and that's why I put on there, I thought you said you were going to share this. Where would I come up with a question like that if you had not told me that we should probably share this?
After our discussion, initially, I did feel that I was going to share it with the rest of the board.
Thank you.
Because I did feel that it was pertinent, but after I
Did you
researched it
research?
further, I found that.
Right, and I agree with that.
Page 2 and the warning from.
So it
going-
wasn't me leading on you, telling you to share it, like you insinuated in your testimony. It was a conversation between us about information that would have been beneficial to the entire board, but could not be released because of the constraints that you found out by doing your research.
The conversation with you was that you would not be able to share it with the rest of the board.
I said I
and
wouldn't
I
share it.
could. You did state that it would need to come from me,
Right,
correct?
okay. So, and that's why I sent it to you, so if there was any issues with it, you would find those issues and not allow it to be shared.
Correct, because it would have
Okay.
violated multiple open meeting law, serial meetings, things like that, yeah.
How would it violate an open meeting law?
You sharing any kind of information like that.
Oh, if
with-
I did, yes.
If you did, yes.
Yeah, I thought you said if you shared it.
Yep.
And you did say that you did research and you verified a couple of items, and you emailed that out to the rest of the board about those items, and still thought that it was a good idea to go ahead and, that's
After
item
I-
number 6.
Yeah, I'll go specifically into that. I talked to, my words were that I still felt he could be our best option with the Asian grocery store, because I don't think it's the city's best interest to put money into rehabbing buildings. I'd make sure that we don't borrow more than the building is worth after the roof is replaced, back lien removed, and the inside renovated. I personally feel if we stay below 20,000, even if he defaulted on the loan, we could try to get the building sold to another party. I made that decision based on financial numbers
Yep.
and financial numbers only.
Nope, I understand that. And then you brought on in your testimony also about me wanting to stop the process. The way I understood the way you were saying it was like you were saying it, did you want me to stop the process on me, but I hadn't had a process started on me yet.
It wasn't until quite a bit further that you went from talking about the process on Jeff to yourself once you were named in the packet. I believe you even referenced that.
When I found out I was named in the, yeah, that was based on the information that the council received for Jeff's stuff. All my previous communications with you were about keeping the city out of the paper and doing the right things and getting this resolved at the best level without making a big drama set out of it. It wasn't talking about me not trying to stop anything on me. It was trying to stop the process on Jeff. That was my intent. That's not the way.
Those are your words, yeah.
Yeah, that's not the way it was, your testimony came across to me, and I wanted to clarify that. My intent with those emails, items number 7, 8, 9, and all the other ones down the line, were not about trying to stop the process on me. That all dealt with Jeff. It was better for the board to keep it intact. And I think had that happened, I think we would have the full board today. I don't think Mr. Seeger would have resigned from the board.
I think it's fair for you to say that you had, you were talking about Jeff in there, but it's also fair to state also that you knew you pulled the report, and self-preservation can also be assumed at this point.
Well, we haven't established that pulling the report is illegal or not yet. And at the point that you bring that in, I will argue that that whole report was brought up in Jeff's hearing, and the council agreed that there was nothing wrong, there was no there on the report. They didn't find him guilty on that charge of the report. And I reference Matt's letter to the council on his memorandum that I brought up at the council meeting on the first part of this month. It was on the page 2, the paragraph, the double asterisk paragraph. It says, as the city council is aware, the city council voted that none of the violations specific to the Fair Credit Reporting Act were substantiated by evidence. So my question to you is, why are we doing this then? If it was already substantiated that it wasn't a violation because there was no loan denied, and I know that because I made the motion to table it until such time as we had a proper application that didn't look like it was filled in. And my exact words were filled out by a 6th grader. So if there's no violation, and have you all found him not guilty of any violating of the Reporting Act for Mr. Salmon, why am I being charged for the same thing?
First of all, the case with Mr. Salmon and the case with yourself, although linked in certain manners, Mr. Salmon didn't pull the report. You pulled the report. And as far as why it was brought forward, it's still a clear violation of EDA lending principles, things like that, and it must be reviewed, if not just for the fairness of the citizens, for the fairness of Jeff Salmon. If he has to be called to the carpet for something like that, so do you for pulling it.
I have no problem with being called the carpet. I have some questions. Where is it written in the EDA bylaws or procedures or anywhere else that specifically states that a board member can't do that?
So you're assuming since it's not written that you can?
I'm asking a question. I'm not making an assumption.
I don't think that you can write every little thing and anticipate what a board member may or may not do, whether it's outside the boundaries of their duty, position, or even rights as a board member. You can't get that specific.
Well, then I'll go back to and as Mr. Stroop did with Jeff, when you go about the application, you are authorized to verify this information and retain the application whether or not approved. Doesn't that give you the authorization to do that?
I think that's a huge stretch for you to assume that you can pull.
I didn't write
I'm gonna
this.
finish what I'm saying. I think that's a huge stretch for you to pull that and then state that you can go onto a site that the very first thing is it warns you can't use it for those principles. It's information that you could not find publicly, and it's information that you, through multiple, relaying it through Jeff Solomon, ended up going to Mark Seeger. Mark Seeger brought it to the board. You talk about how.
Now, you're
that was-
assuming I relayed it to Mr. Solomon. I downloaded it to a Solomon-owned computer. I didn't mean I sent it to him.
Are you wishing to question Mr. Solomon on that then?
Nope, I have no problem with it at all. It's his property, not
Now,
mine.
I also believe that during the hearing for Mr. Solomon, it was stated that he got the report from you.
Well, I paid for it, so yeah, it would be.
Okay, so where are you trying to separate this?
I'm just pointing it out. I'm not,
So let me
I'm
ask
trying
you,
to
did you
figure
give
out how
Mr.
I'm guilty
Solomon-
of something that
you
someone
give
else
Mr.
has found
Solomon a report?
innocent of.
Did you
Did
give
I
Mr.
physically
Solomon
give him a report? No. I
Did you email
downloaded
it?
one on his computer.
So he went onto your computer afterwards and pulled the report?
He could have. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't have cameras
I find
in
that
there.
highly unlikely, but, okay, that's a stretch, but you can have it. So I want to go back to one of your other points. You talked about how this never got voted on, that was brought up during Jeff's hearing and things like that. It died by lack of motion because of the fact that Mark Seeger spent an amount of time going over the information that he got specifically from a background report that you pulled.
That's right. But that doesn't mean that Mr. Mattson was denied a billing for $485. It means that the board, because I made the next motion, was not to sell the building at all.
In multiple emails from both you and Mr. Solomon, it states that, I believe your words were that I don't see this getting stopped, I believe this is going to be finished, I believe I can't get in the way of this.
I
things
felt
like
that when I walked into the board meeting that morning. It wasn't until Mark spoke, and I think, I'm not gonna turn around and try and speak for everybody in the board, but when Mark spoke, when he was done, because he spoke with such passion, that there was only one person left in that room that wanted to see that sale go through, that was a board member,
After Mark spoke,
after Mark spoke.
with information he received from the report.
Right, that he verified. And he started off by
Do you
saying that he
have proof
verified
it?
it. His word. Do I have proof that you verified it? Your word, you put it in an email to me.
I find it quite a stretch for you to state that you pulled a report, it ended up in Mark Seeger's hands, and you have no responsibility for it.
I didn't say I was not responsible.
You just said that Mr. Solomon must have pulled it off your
I
computer.
said it's his computer. I didn't send one to Mark.
That's been established. The link
Yeah.
from Mark is from
And-
Mr. Solomon.
And there is no evidence of guilt on that.
Again, two completely separate issues.
It's still the same report. The same issue is over this report.
Did Mr.
I will
Solomon pull the
concede to the
report?
fact that there's probably no one in this room that's happy that I did that background check. I could concede to that fact. I can understand it. I can also let you know that a multitude of people have come and thanked me for doing just that and not getting into a loan that would possibly have saved a building or not possibly have saved a building.
So you feel that you could disregard page 2 and the initial warning for the benefit of the people in Tracy? You could break the rules.
Is that actually a disclaimer by that company so you can't come back and sue them? Or is that actually the law?
Did you read the Fair Credit Reporting Act?
Yes, I did.
Okay, what did you find?
I found that I did not violate it
Okay. Well, our city
because the loan wasn't denied.
our city attorney sees otherwise.
And that's why you have attorneys. You got one on each side that argue an argument, and they're both right, and it's up to people to decide if that's actually a fact or not. Otherwise, if we could settle things in an adult fashion at the higher end of the chain without going to attorneys, we wouldn't be here tonight.
I'm not an expert.
We wouldn't
in
need to have-
Reporting Act, therefore I couldn't.
Do you have any more questions for Mr. Ambu and Mr. Peterson? You'll have the opportunity to.
Yeah, no,
testify
that's-
yourself. Okay.
Those were the ones, because the way it came across is not the way I intended.
Does anyone have any follow-up questions, Mr. Ambu, in light of Mr. Peterson's questions?
So, you did not give the background report to Jeff Salman.
Were you supposed to be asking me questions or the?
He hasn't
test-
testified yet. This is any responsive questions to
Oh, no,
Mr. Ambu.
I don't.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
There's no other witnesses that I'm aware of that would be testifying in support of the allegation, so at this point, Mr. Peterson, you'd be able to testify, so then take the oath and you can proceed with your testimony.
Do you swear to tell the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I read all the information that you sent to the rest of the council. And this has been in the front line and the talk of the town now for well over a month. It's been hashed and rehashed. I attempted in a letter to the editor to explain my position on this. Chris, you make a valid point, or somewhat valid point, that just because it isn't written there doesn't make it right to do. I can agree with that in certain circumstances. I've served this city on boards and on the council, and as a council member and as a mayor, as board chairman of boards. I've conducted myself in what I consider a very professional manner. I do my business for the city, not for personal gain or gain of anybody else, but I gear my thought processes and my labor and my time and money that I invest in doing what's right for the city. I'm a bull in a china shop. I'm a lightning rod. I've been that way all my life. That's not going to change. But the bottom line is, what I do is in the best interest of the city every time I do it. When I come across something oddball, I will reach out, as I did, to the city administrator and say, make the call. If it can be shared, it can be shared. If it can't be shared, it can't be shared. I rest it there. It seems to me that we've gone, the bridge too far on this without taking into consideration both sides. I believe what's happening here is almost Orwellian in nature, where the thought police are saying, he's got bad thoughts, he's not doing it the way I do it, so we got to come up with some charges here. I think this whole Fair Credit Reporting Act, by the fact that no loan was denied, shouldn't even be an issue at anything any longer. There are multiple background checks websites out there that are for public use. You spend your money, you take your chances. Do you take and use all that information as a Bible? You certainly do not. If you're going to dig deep, you better start researching some of it. I've used them all in the past. I've used My Life. I've been verified. I used Truthfinder. 99.9% of the ones that I've run came back exactly as I expected them. There was no there. This particular one, and the reason I shared it with you, Chris, is because of an outstanding felony in the state of Wisconsin for a theft from a business. And that's been verified by 3 different people. Otherwise, I wouldn't even bring it up. He's got a continuation on that trial, it's still pending. So, in order to save time, I did what I did because that's what I do. I told everybody in this community by a letter to the editor what I did, why I did it, and that's what I do. If I made a mistake, I fess up to my mistakes and I apologize for them. But this one here, I do not believe is a mistake. I do not believe an apology is necessary. If somebody thinks that we need to have a policy against this, then write the policy. Because I'll ask Jeff, do I do a good job in the EDA or don't I?
You're asking them the question, you can answer them.
It's your time that you can call him as a witness if you want to, Mr. Peters.
Well, then I'll call Jeff and Dave as a witness.
You gotta be sworn in.
You swear to tell the truth, so help you God. Do you swear to tell the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Do I do good work for the EDA?
Yes.
Am I always the most pleasant person to get along with?
Hell no.
Do I say what I think?
Yep.
When we have a meeting, and there's heated meetings that we've had, when we go out that door to go back to the rest of our lives, are we still mad at each other? Are we still throwing stones at each other? Or do we shake our hands, have a laugh, and say, that one's done, let's go get the next one and get things done?
I'm kind of like that with her. If I got a problem, I'm gonna say something to you.
Exactly.
As you know.
Yep, and I have no problem with that. I appreciate that. I wish we had more people like you. Dave, do I do a good job in the EDA?
Yep,
Am I a pain in the neck?
most days.
Is that gonna change?
Probably not.
No. No, it ain't gonna. So to put it quite simply, if you feel that I've been so egregious by doing a background check and doing my due diligence, just like it says in sections 232 and 233, where you're supposed to look out for the best interest of the city, if you think I have failed in that, kick me off the EDA. Because I could use a spare time. But if you think that kicking me off is going to help the city in any way, you're making a huge mistake. That's all. There's nothing more to say. I think this has just gone on way too far, way too Orwellian for somebody like me. There's nobody in this room knows what goes on inside my mind or why I do things until they know me. And if you knew me, you'd know that those are wrong. I yield.
Anything else, Mr. Peterson?
That's all I got.
Any additional questions that the council has for any other witnesses?
Or any other witnesses? No, I would like to ask Mr. Peterson. So as I started to say, you did not provide that background check to Mr. Solomon.
I put it on his Solomon old computers. He had access to it. I downloaded it.
So, so that would be consistent with laying it on the desk for anyone to see. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Got no problem with that. But where is it written that I can't lay something on a desk?
Well, excuse me, I think that would fall under negligence. Leaving
I'm not charged with negligence.
PII, well, it's, at the very least, it's irresponsible. You know, that, we have very specific laws about PII and how it's to be handled. as a EDA board member and a member of city council, you have attended several training sessions, yes,
No,
through League of Minnesota Cities,
one time.
one time. And did they discuss any of this at all?
Nope.
Okay, so you've had no training through your experience of 10 years that would tell you,
I can tell you that in the 10 to 12 years that I've served this city, we went from sending out complete resumes and applications to every member of the council so they could take at their leisure, look things up, to a complete 180 degrees away from that, where we spend a lot of money redacting things and sending them out, wasting paper, where you redact the whole page but send it anyway. So if that's what you're saying is experience with personal information, yeah, I understand it. But that being said, if you can purchase something on the internet, where is that protected? It's all from public records. Now, they haven't been verified, I say that. And that, there was no social security numbers in here, no driver's license numbers. There's nothing in here that would fall under a directive to, keep it close to somebody's vest. There was addresses, a history of addresses. I pulled mine, they got all mine, but they have no phone numbers.
didn't the warnings specifically state you couldn't use this background investigation for precisely what it was to be used for?
It never got used for that.
But at the time that it was pulled,
See, now you're going down that road with the thought police again. At the time, the reason I pulled that report at the time, it looked like a sixth grader filled out the loan application. There was a couple pages missing or didn't flow right in the credit report that the couple sent to us.
okay,
And it just didn't set right in my gut. And as I was punching the information in to purchase a background report, some subcontractors come in, and we're going to put a mechanics lien on the building out there. So I hit send. I bought it.
we did talk earlier about the application and the paragraph at the bottom, and you had stated that that authorizes you to pull more
I
information.
look at it that way, yes.
Okay, but it says, to be specific, you are authorized to verify this information, specifically what's here.
And that's all I
And it
went.
also says that you are authorized to receive additional credit information. That has nothing to do with
I never went
criminal-
after any credit
criminal
information.
background or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the background report you pulled contained all of that.
Yeah.
This does not authorize you to pull that information.
That's a stretch, but you can't just buy one way and not the other, from a public standpoint. I mean, if I was a business, I could have got all three of and spent a whole lot more money and got all three of the credit ratings on it.
Well, isn't that in
But-
fact what we're supposed to use?
No. The lender, the person, the lendee is supposed to provide the board with a credit report.
Yes. But it's,
And it's up to
From
us to
one of those
verify it.
three,
It's
yes.
up to, yeah, it's up to us to verify it.
okay. I know that, I believe that you try to do what's in the best interest of the city. But you have a lot of experience, as you said, you've stated you've been a board member, you've been the mayor, you've been on the EDA. At no time it hit you that this might not be appropriate and open the city to a lawsuit? And is that in the best interest of the city?
How is it going to open the city to a lawsuit when it wasn't used for anything?
But the intent was there.
Again, I go back to thought police. You can't be put in jail for intent. You can't be tried for intent.
Yes, you can.
Oh, I intended to steal a horse, so now you're going to hang me?
Have you ever
You
heard
can't prove I had any intent.
Have you ever heard of intent to distribute? That's a common charge with drugs. And-
Well, we're not talking drugs here.
But you just said you cannot prosecute under intent. You most certainly can.
Well, it's highly unlikely. Unless you want to go back to the Orwellian stuff, the thought police.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Yep.
Just for clarification purposes, Mr. Pearson, you were in attendance at all the EDA board meetings on June 5th, June 12th, June 19th, and July 3rd, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm punctual and reliable.
So you were there. I know the minutes reflect that, but did the board specifically authorize any member to go and pull an
They
officer?
did not, and they did not prohibit anyone from doing it. There was no mention of it whatsoever.
Now, typically in that sort of arrangement, the board acts as an entity and votes on those matters, right?
No,
You know,
no. They usually act on the information that's presented to them at the meeting. And in that case, you know, there's a lot of confidential material that's emailed to the board members as far as the financial stuff, and then it's brought up at the meeting. But they don't, in my history in the EDA, they've never said, you go find this, or you go find that, or you go find this. It was always assumed that people are showing up for meetings that are well-informed and well-educated and aware of all the facts.
But you obtained the report in your capacity as an individual, not with board approval.
I purchased the product on the internet as an individual.
And the loan was made to the EDA through the application, right? He did apply for the loan. through
He
the
did,
application.
and the loan, I made a motion to table the loan until such time as he provided a loan application where the numbers made sense, and maybe another background report, or not background, but another credit report. But the loan application itself, if you looked at it, if I was a bank, I wouldn't even have called him in for an interview. I'd have said, try again.
And you ordered the background report after you saw that application,
That and a few other things, yeah.
and just the application itself is made out to Tracy Economic Development Authority, right? On 16 on the top, it's.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, yep. It's just their standard form.
And that would mean that he's applying to the EDA for the loan, and the EDA would have to authorize the.
Yes, the entire board would have to authorize it, yes.
I have nothing further. Does any of the council members have any further questions?
Just to be clear, you were asked to step down from the EDA, is that correct?
Yes, I was.
By who?
The mayor asked me after the meeting on the patio being open.
I asked him.
When did the council approve you to do that?
I don't need council approval. You could have asked him to.
Oh,
Wait.
yes, you do.
Because if you're the mayor, you're not a citizen. You're part of this council.
Yes,
And you need approval to do anything because you can't act alone. I can't ask him to resign
why not?
because I'm on the council.
But you're not acting.
I'm part of
You're not
5
acting.
people.
Okay,
We
is this
will
really-
address this at a
Yeah.
different time. Okay, and we will talk about it.
And we should,
Yes, I agree. We
because
will
you're
talk about
acting
it.
out of line.
As I said, we'll discuss it that's outside of the purview of this,
Will we discuss it at a council meeting?
if you like.
We should.
Okay, very good. So, I have nothing further than that, so that was just,
Jerry, did I answer all your questions?
Yep, I think between you and Chris and the multitude of documents and that, I think I,
Okay. Pooh, you got any questions for me?
No.
Dave, you got any?
Nope.
We close the hearing and deliberate then at this point?
The council can close the record if they vote to choose so, then move to deliberation on the evidence presented.
Okay. Do we need a motion to close that, or,
Yes, motion to close the record and then proceed with deliberation.
okay, can I get a motion to close the record?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
First and second, any discussion or questions? Move to vote.
Al? Jones?
Aye.
Teague?
Aye.
Mayor Dimmers?
Aye.
And
Motion passes.
prior to deliberation, just like the last hearing, I can summarize some of my comments in relation to the charges, and also Mr. Peterson have the opportunity to do so before you officially deliberate on the specific allegations. So, as indicated in the notice of written charges, there's 3 allegations made against Mr. Peterson that he committed misconduct in office in his position as EDA board member. Namely, 1, that he violated the Fair Credit Reporting Act, Section 604F, in obtaining and using a background report from truthfinder.com on James Mattson for a prohibited purpose. 2, that he violated City Code 2.30, Subdivision 2, by obtaining a background report from truthfinder.com on James Mattson. And finally, 3, that he exceeded his authority and position as an EDA board member by ordering a background report on James Mattson from truthfinder.com without EDA board authority or approval. And Mr. Peterson, I recognize your comments before. You were very keen in recognizing my double asterisk in my memo to the council. It's important to note that if you compare these allegations with the allegations made against Mr. Selman, they're different. I know they stem from the same basis of a violation of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Mr. Solomon, it was obtaining and using that information to make an adverse action on a loan. The council did not substantiate that evidence. However, here, it's focused on the actual obtaining the credit report. So that's the distinction, and that's what's contained in the...
Then why wasn't, no offense, but why wasn't that spelled out in your report, and then you're spelling it out now? Because your double asterisk paragraph didn't spell that out.
That was...
Now, it's like you're adding on here.
Absolutely not. When you look at those charges, they're different. That was for
It's the
obtaining and
same
disseminating-
subdivisions that you're charging me on that you charged Jeff on. It's just, you threw in Fair Credit Reporting Act instead of something else. I don't see the difference in any of this when it comes right down to it.
There's a difference because one was based upon the adverse action. The council did not substantiate that. This is the obtaining and using it.
And so it's now against the rules of this city of Tracy for an individual to purchase a product that serves on a council or board to purchase a product off the internet. That's what you're telling me.
There's different rules that govern that. And-
Where are the rules? That's
and
what I asked.
And I'll explain that to you as I proceed, and you can contest that if you wish after I'm finished. But I'll explain that to the council so they have both views, just as if, just as in Mr. Solomon's hearing. So they got a viewpoint from both parties. So, as noted, the first charge is the violation of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. As indicated at 604F, that's the allegation that Mr. Peterson violated. And specifically, they obtained and used the background check from truthfinder.com on James Mattson for a prohibited purpose. When you look at the purpose and the intent of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, that is to apply to credit reporting agencies and the information they compile so that they rely upon employment and lending decisions, and the information that they compile and rely upon is accurate. Accuracy is the most important thing of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. That's why it was established, and the intent is to make sure that people are relying upon accurate information and they're not discriminating against people based upon that information. So that applies to consumer reporting agencies. The Fair Credit Reporting Act, that's its sole purpose, to govern fair or consumer reporting agencies. Then you have to look at what defines a fair or consumer reporting agency. That's the first determination that the council needs to make in this analysis is truthfinder.com a consumer reporting agency under the definition of the Fair Credit Reporting Act? When you look at the definition, I can read that for you. It defines a consumer reporting agency as a company that assembles and evaluates consumer report information for providing those reports to third parties. When you look at exhibit number 20, the Fair Trade Commission has ruled that companies like truthfinder.com, which compile this information, although they're not one of the three major credit reporting agency acts, is a consumer reporting agency. It meets that definition. And you ask why? Because they accept a fee, they compile background information, personal characteristics, person's reputation, character, and because they do that, they're obligated and bound to follow the laws of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. That's what Congress has established. The Fair Trade Commission, as indicated in Exhibit 20, has made that determination. And this is true regardless of whether they include a disclaimer or a notice to the person saying, hey, we're not a consumer reporting credit agency. Don't rely upon this. The Fair Trade Commission has ruled that despite that, they still are because they meet that definition. If you look at Exhibit 20, it's included in there. Then you also can look at Exhibit 17, 18, 20, 21, 22, and 23. Those are all, Exhibit 17 is the text of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. 18 is the US EOC. 20 is the Federal Trade Commission. 21 and 22 and 23 are all in relation to truthfinder.com. The actual report itself on page 2 has the notice, disclaimer. 22 is the notice that Mr. Ambiel testified about, that when you access that site, it notices you that this is not to be used for certain purposes. And then 23 is just the about. When you access the website, it says it cannot be used for certain purposes. One of those is lending and loan decisions. So as indicated, the first determination that the council has to make when weighing the evidence is, one, is truthfinder.com a consumer reporting agency under the definition? So that's the first determination that the council needs to make. The second is in the text of section 604, paragraph F, and that says that you have to meet both requirements in order to lawfully use or obtain a consumer report. And the consumer report is information that's compiled on an individual for lending purposes, employment purposes of this nature. So the first requirement of that must be met. So both have to be met for it to be lawful. The first is that the consumer report is obtained for a purpose which the consumer report is authorized to be furnished. Now, Section 604 of the Fair Credit Reporting Act sets forth permissible purposes of furnishing reports, and one of those is if the individual gave consent to the person or entity obtaining the report. Here, Mr. Mattson gave authority to the EDA to obtain the credit information. That's indicated on Exhibit 16, the loan application. It did not specifically state on the form that Mr. Peterson was authorized in his individual capacity to obtain that report. And additionally, the EDA board did not approve or authorize Mr. Peterson to obtain that report on his own behalf. As he indicated, he obtained that in his own interest in his individual capacity. So with that first requirement, the council has to weigh the evidence in whether Mr. Peterson was authorized by Mr. Mattson to obtain that information. You can base that upon the testimony and the Exhibit 16, the application itself, but taking into consideration whether the EDA board approved that and whether Mr. Mattson approved that. So the first requirement is that it was authorized to be furnished. If you find that that hasn't been met, then that violation must be found because there's two requirements, both have to be found in order to be lawfully obtained and used. The second requirement is that it's for the purpose of obtaining the consumer report is certified in accordance with Section 607 of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Section 607 requires that any credit reporting agency that prepares these reports follows procedures to ensure maximum possible accuracy of the information concerning the individual about the report and who it relates to. So that refers back to the whole purpose of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It has to be certified, and they have to certify that they follow the Fair Credit Reporting Act procedures in ensuring that information is accurate. In this case, you have multiple disclaimers and notices that they don't follow the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And that's why they provide those disclaimers. Do not use this for credit decisions, loan decisions. That's included in Exhibits 21, 22, and 23. Truthfinder.com clearly states that in those notices. So the second requirement, if the council does find that the first requirement was met, is that they need to find that Truthfinder.com follows the compliance procedures under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Notably that they require that the information be verified and accurate. And you base that upon the evidence that has been presented before you, applying the substantial evidence test. So that's in relation to count 1. You have to find that Truthfinder.com is in fact a consumer reporting agency. 2, that the report that was obtained was authorized. If you find that it wasn't authorized, you don't need to go any further in your analysis, but if you do find it was authorized, then thirdly, you need to find that Truthfinder.com complies with the compliance sections of the Fair Credit Report, notably that they verify and present accurate information. So those are the 3 items the council needs to determine it. And one of the 2 on the second or third, if you only find 1, then it is a violation. In regards to the violation number 2, violation of City Code 2.30, subdivision 2, it's a city code. It requires that public officials are bound to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state, and to carry out impartially the laws of the nation, state, and municipality. As indicated in the notice of written charges, it's alleged that Mr. Peterson did not carry out impartially the laws of the nation, state, and municipality by obtaining a background report from Truthfinder.com on Mr. Mattson. So in determining whether this has been substantiated or not, the council needs to determine whether Mr. Mattson or Mr. Peterson violated city code if he acted differently towards Mr. Mattson than others who applied for loans from the EDA by obtaining a background report on Mr. Mattson. In making this determination, the council needs to consider whether Mr. Mattson authorized Mr. Peterson to obtain the background report, whether Mr. Peterson followed the EDA loan guidelines and requirements, and whether Mr. Peterson complied with the Fair Credit Reporting Act. You need to take all those into consideration. One doesn't automatically make it a violation, but you need to determine whether he he followed the law evenly, not impartially, meaning he did this for one person, not the other, or chose to follow some laws or not the others. It has to be even-handed compliance with those statutes and those laws. The council needs to substantiate that in order to find that that has been violated. Lastly, the third charge is the violation of City Code 2.30, subdivision 3. That states that officials and employees shall not exceed their authority. That basically is based upon the determination whether the EDA provided Mr. Peterson authority in his individual capacity to obtain this background report. It's as simple as that. Whether the council finds that has been substantiated or not, that's something that they need to determine to consider the last allegation. As indicated before, if the council finds 1 or more charges, then Mr. Peterson must be removed. If they find none, then he must remain on the EDA board.
Do you have any more questions?
No, not questions. He can present his argument.
Or,
In response to charge number 1, that it violated the Fair Credit Reporting Act. A publicly purchased piece of information that was not used to determine whether or not someone was allowed a loan is not a violation. Whether or not Truthfinder, I don't know if they're a reporting agency that falls into that Fair Credit Reporting Act, they're not one of the big 3. I don't know. And it was never intended to be used for verification of finances, because they're inherently lousy on that. All 3 of the background checks that you could purchase on the internet are that way. My intent on that was to verify the addresses and background of the individual. I didn't know him. I've done this in the past everything checked out compared to what the individual gave me. I shared it with no one. There was no big glowing problem in the report. So when I found the problem, I followed the only course of action I could and shared it with the administrator. So that should take care of charge number 2. Yes, I've done it in the past. Most of the loans that we do in the EDA are with people that we know their families, we know their backgrounds, they come in, they fill everything out. There's no question as to what's going on or what they're going to do with it or anything else. In my time on the EDA, the only loan we turned down was because the individual who was asking for the loan had the cash assets that well exceeded the amount of operating capital that they wanted from us, and the EDA doesn't tend to get into the operating capital side unless absolutely necessary. So the history with the loans going on, it hasn't been good. I took the initiative, took it upon myself to do some more verifying. It's my time on there. Any loan that I was involved with, either approving or disapproving, has been good loans that have been paid off. So as to the charge number 3, whether it exceeded my authority, I'll go back and say I don't see anywhere where it's written that due diligence and the best information that you can get to make the decisions that you need to make and the best outlook for the city of Tracy is something that you should be charged with. The rest is up to you.
Okay. You have nothing further? Okay. So now at this time, we deliberate the facts or what's been presented. So we can just take them in order, I guess. The violation of the Fair Credit Reporting Act.
I get what you're saying, Matt. But at the same time, I don't believe it was used for a prohibited purpose. Looking back at the minutes and everything, like Tony did state that, yes, he made the motion, but the motion was, just a minute, I have it highlighted here in one of these. The motion was made to decline the sale of the Asian market, but that's not for credit or loan purposes or anything. And then the motion was made by Peterson to table the loan application until he gets one that makes sense. So really, it wasn't used for him to decline the loan. It was tabled.
Which exhibit are you on?
Oh, I'm sorry. Exhibit number 3. Page 1, 2, 3, 4. Kind of like in the middle of the, you see where these highlights? Right here.
Second paragraph.
Yeah. You know, and even if you go further into the minutes, it does say that a motion was, and I'm not going to say any more names, I'm just going to mention Tony's because he's the one here. I'm not going to continue to mention other people because it's not fair to them. That a motion was made to lease the building to Mattson. After the discussion, it was decided that we would wait to get the roof fixed and then go to Mattson and any other person that might want to lease or buy the building. So, I mean, it wasn't thrown out. And if you look at the next set of meetings, that's when Mr. Mattson, I'll use his name, formally withdrew any interest in purchasing. So he's the one that withdrew it on his own. I guess in my opinion, I feel with Mr. Salmon, I know there's a difference because Tony is the one that obtained the background check, but I don't believe he obtained it for the credit purposes. He obtained it for the background purposes of it, and then did what I probably would have done, is forward it to our city administrator, because it's confusing with all these laws and everything, what we can share or do or whatever. And that was actually the action that Tony did take, was to share it with Chris. And I'm not gonna get into, I sit here and I look at the different, I've got the allegations here with the prior hearing and everything. I'm not gonna drag up all that stuff again, but as far as Tony doing it, I am going to say he did not obtain it for a prohibited purpose. I guess I'm interested to hear what you guys say, because I want us lay people here to discuss it. We learned from the last hearing, we can't be pulling our lawyers into the deliberations.
Well, from being at the EDA meeting too, that never came up, that Tony came up and said, I obtained a report and it looks bad, or I think it looks bad, or it looks great, or whatever. That never came up. So I never knew that was even told.
Well, it's right here in the minutes of this meeting that
Until
the
Mark started.
information was pulled, and talks about cases that were open are verifiable, and concerned about a ripple effect that happens as a result of this.
Is that on 3?
Yes, sir. Considering the background, he doesn't want to take anything from a report about an individual unless they can verify it, which that makes sense. My only question here is that, because I tend to agree with Jerry for the majority, but the question I've always kind of had was, if this information hadn't been presented or known at the EDA board prior to this, would it have been tabled? Would it have been voted on? Did it weigh at all in the decision to table or deny the sale? Excuse me.
And I think I can go back to the last one. When we started talking that day, it's like, we weren't sure where we were going, and the credit application wasn't complete and was missing some information. So we were at a point where it's like, well, what are we gonna do with the building? Are we gonna put money into it, or are we gonna have somebody else put money into it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we were up in the air on that too, exactly what we were gonna do.
But we don't know if it really had any impact on the decision.
Like I said, I couldn't tell you to this day how I would have voted on that, because I was trying
Right.
to figure it out.
I don't think any of us can look into the
No, you don't have
future,
a
the
crystal ball for
back
that.
into the past, whatever,
But,
to know
uh,
what people would have done or not done. But Tony was not the one that brought it to the EDA meeting. And that's what we are here to discuss today, is what Tony did or did not do, or why he did it or whatever, not what
correct.
anybody else did.
That's correct. I don't believe any of this was done with malice.
No. So I will make a motion that I do not find that violation of the Fair Credit Reporting Act 15 USC, is that enough for me to say? Has been found unsubstantiated.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'd second that.
First and second, is there any further comment or question? Move to vote.
Dave Teagues,
Aye.
Rutel.
Aye.
Jerry Schoen's,
Aye.
Mayor Dimmers.
Aye. So we find that the alleged violation of 604 of the Fair Credit Reporting Act was not substantiated by the evidence. Allegation 2, it is alleged that you did not carry out impartially the laws of the nation, state, and municipality by obtaining a background report from truthfinder.com on James Mattson.
Tony just stated that he's done it in the past, and so I think he applies things evenly if he doesn't know the people. And if he does know the people, he'll ask the questions. If everything's filled out properly and information is, so it's like I don't think he just picked out this one application and when I'm just gonna make sure that no loan is approved.
Well, looking at the code of conduct that everyone signs,
Exhibit.
Exhibit 25.
That wasn't in the list of charges.
No.
Okay.
But,
Yeah, just want to make sure.
okay. Oh, yeah, it was Exhibit 25 in, I think, a different hearing. But the code of conduct is
It's 25 in this one.
it?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I thought maybe I pulled it wrong or something.
No.
Okay. When I look at the very first bullet,
Yep.
be diligent in their role, that can be very varied by person to person. I think Tony has admitted that he can be a bull in a china shop. But that doesn't necessarily mean a bull cannot be a good member of a committee to do their job. And that's why I pulled it out. It wasn't
No,
that you did not follow the code of conduct or anything. It was just that bullet just is what I have to sit here and weigh.
and that goes along with the 2.2.
So, this is a tough one. He has admitted he's done it in the past. This isn't the first time he's pulled it. It's probably the first time it's been as,
Public.
well, even just with as much information in it to be verified and everything. Where before, if it's not as many findings on it, you haven't had to utilize it in the same manner. You know, I think we do have to work on setting some better guidelines and a few things here in the city that we probably have learned out throughout this whole process for us all to have better guidance on how to handle things and what to do and when to do it and everything. But I don't see where it's prohibited for somebody to, because anybody can go on and pull a background report. I mean, there are multiple sites that you can go on and pull, and it is every citizen's right. There's probably people out there that have now pulled them on me, and I don't know what, I'm going to pull one on myself, I suppose, sometime here to see
They're
what I can
interesting.
expect. But anyone can. So even as a citizen, anyone could have, knowing what the negotiations or the considerations that were going on. Anyone could have pulled that, and, I mean, I'm not gonna name any name. Joe Blow, citizen, could have pulled it and brought it to Tony, or brought it to Jeff, or brought it to Mr. Foltz, or whoever, saying, this is what I found, but I don't know what to do with it. You know, I think that's kind of what Tony did, is he did it, he found it, he didn't know what to do with it, so he took it to you, Chris. You did what you felt your next steps were to do. I mean, you did verify things and everything, and that was the accurate thing to do. And you didn't share the whole report. You just chose the things that you could do, because I think that was the advice you had been given by our attorney. So that speech being quite long, I guess, I don't know if he's done anything different than he's done for other people.
Well, if you've been doing something for 10 years and it's not appropriate, it doesn't make it appropriate because you've been doing it for 10 years. What we need to look at here is, what he was talking about is even-handed. Did he do it for everyone or just certain people?
Just people he didn't know, is what he stated.
Yes.
But
So
I look at it.
that in itself is prejudicial. We want to grow this town. We want
No.
people to come here and do business, but if they think they're going to come here and be scrutinized in their personal background, that's not exactly inviting.
But when you step forward to the next level, it's not everyone that moves to town that we all of a sudden are doing background checks on everybody.
No, only if you come to the city and want to do business with them.
But that's the thing, business. Business is different than personal.
Right, and the background check was not pulled as a citizen, it was pulled as a EDA board member.
And I don't see where it says they can't. That's why I'm saying we need to make that clear, that if they can't do that as individuals, we need to spell that out. So in the future, if somebody has questions, their gut saying something to them, that maybe we spell it out, that then they go to the chair, the board chair, or they go to the EDA director or whatever, and say it. But there's not that guidance right now. I'm not looking at what I want to see in the future. I'm looking at right now what guidance is there to tell him he should not do that.
And what's the difference if, let's say, somebody from Slayton wants to come here and open a business? What's the difference if I go over to Slayton and walk up and down the street and talk to every business owner about them? It's doing a background check to a degree.
As an individual citizen, I mean, you have that right, and Tony has that right as well. But we're held to a higher standard as council members and EDA board members. And it's spelled out in the law, and it's spelled out in the background investigations and how, you know, what they're for. And just because, and we talked about this before, just because it doesn't specifically say that a Tracy EDA board member or council member cannot pull a background investigation, doesn't mean you can.
So what do you
Doesn't mean that it's
consider due
appropriate.
diligence? What do you consider due diligence?
Well,
When
the
I
inf-
sign this and it says that I need to be diligent in my role, that means I need to do what I do with being on this council.
Within the
Before I
law.
come to something like this, I do my research, I do my highlighting, I do all of that stuff. And that's being diligent. In
Yeah.
his mind, being diligent was seeing if his gut, and that was correct by doing a background check, not a credit check, a background.
And at what point is a background check authorized? Anywhere. You can do a credit check.
You can do a
And that's
background
what-
check anytime.
That's what this is
Credit check is
about.
more the problem.
I don't believe that to be the case.
Yeah, my opinion on this is
it's really hard, and I don't
It
think
is.
that, any one of us up here, want this, we don't, this is, this is the hot seat, and it's hard, and there's not any clear direction, and that's where I'm battling with this. Yes, it's here, but, going forward, I would love to see more clear guidelines, just so that, we're not afraid to be on boards and stuff like that. It's hopefully something good will come out of this, and hopefully we can take the next step and make things clear so that, whoever gets on board, they can have direction to kind of guide them. And
No,
it's hard.
Well, we've established that it's difficult. The last one was too, and it's because nobody likes to do this. It's my opinion that if you're doing it on everyone, or as a matter of policy, that's one thing. But picking and choosing based on because you don't know them or not, I mean, I don't believe that's appropriate. And I've heard talk about, well, the rules are only for larger cities and not small towns, and I don't see that written in any of the statutes either.
I don't think you've
So-
heard that from any of us that are making
No,
this
no, I'm saying I've
decision.
heard it, so if you went to Minneapolis and somebody came in to apply for a loan or, do business there, purchase a building, whatever, you're not gonna know them either.
And I don't know how it's spelled out in their things right now. That's what I'm saying we don't have spelled out. We need to have clear guidance for all the boards, we need clear guidance. But right now, we're talking the EDA for Jeff, as he sits here and is tasked with, working with people to buy lots, to buy buildings and everything. We do need to be consistent. I totally agree with you.
Well,
If we're
and I
gonna
think-
do it on one, we're gonna do it on all.
And I think
But it
that's
doesn't
clear.
say that right now.
Yes, it does.
Where?
It says you have to be consistent. Does it not? Is
He's
that what you said?
consistent in his way. He's consistent in, if he doesn't know the person,
Well, I can be consistent at randomly turning left or right on the highway, too. I mean, no, that's not consistent. You either do it for everyone or no one. That's consistent.
that's your definition of it. You can be consistent and not do something on every person. He is being consistent on saying he does it on people he does not know.
Okay?
I'm
and
not
you-
saying if it's right or wrong.
No, and you could have a
I'm not saying if that's
policy.
right or wrong. I'm just saying his actions have been consistent.
You could have a policy that says, given certain circumstances, that would trigger further investigation or a closer look. But it's not for Tony to judge on his own who wants a closer look or not.
For himself, it is. He set his standards. He has consistently done this to people.
But then that, yes, and that doesn't make it right.
Oh, it doesn't make it wrong either, because it's his
His standard.
ability of what I'm doing.
I don't think we're debating whether that's right or wrong, but we don't have a guideline on
Yeah,
what's.
right now, it doesn't
The
tell.
code says impartially. So that's the guideline in 2.30 subdivision 2,
Impartially.
impartially carrying out the laws.
So by specifically picking those out, that's not impartial. He's using a standard of, I don't know them. That's not impartial.
Guess it depends on how tight you want to get that. I mean, you can be impartial by maybe a incorrect practice, but he did this on other people too. So it's not like this, if this was the only time this gentleman did a background check was on this guy, I would definitely say it was impartial. But he has done other background checks.
Only on specific people that he deemed necessary.
That was his
That's
standard.
not impartial.
That was his standard.
Doesn't make it right. The word being impartially. And that would be a standard that would apply to everyone.
And that's what we're going to shoot for in the future, but right now we have to live in the present.
Well, why would you not have a standard that
We
applies to
can't
everyone
hold
in
him
the
to a
present?
standard that's not in writing yet.
Why not?
Because it's not in writing, he wouldn't know it. He would not know the
Do
expectation.
you think you can hold people to a moral standard? That's not in writing.
How do I say this? You're comparing apples to oranges here. A moral, you're comparing apples to oranges, and I don't even know how to respond to it.
The intent here is to protect people so that they get an even,
Yep, and in the future, by God, that's what we're going to do. But right now, we cannot hold them to a standard we want to set for the future.
so,
Would it help if I gave you my definition of impartiality?
no.
Okay. I just try to help.
I think it's been brought up before, you cannot foresee every little detail that may occur in people's actions. You have to apply a level of judgment. And I guess that's where we disagree on the definition of the word impartial. So if you did something wrong in the past, we're just going to give everybody a pass because we're going to make new rules. That doesn't make sense.
No, but if you, okay. I don't know the attachment, just a minute.
24.
24, the one this one? If you look at number 24,
Getting there. Three.
Where are you going, Jerry?
where I'm going is the second to the last, where it says that they are bound to observe their official acts, the highest standards of morality, and to discharge faithfully the duties of their office regardless of personal considerations, recognizing that the public interest must be their primary concern. I truly think the public interest was his primary concern.
Regardless of his personal. And he's using that to decide who gets checked and who doesn't. His personal decision.
No, it wasn't about the loan. That only was tabled. That was not denied.
Where,
He ordered the,
you're on page 4?
I only printed off I went into the charter, I didn't go from the things. I just printed off from the actual,
So this is not number 24?
oh,
It's in 24.
yeah, right here. It's just mine's just bigger.
It's number
Okay.
2.
Okay.
Under subdivision 2. I just printed off the one section, section 2.3.
Yeah, and it's right there, that's impartially,
Yeah,
the laws of the nation, state, municipality, to foster.
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying what he wrote here.
All they
It's
are
not true. I mean, it's written here.
Right,
Right from it, that's not my, my debate. I'm just saying that part of it is included is that the public interest must be their primary concern.
Yes, okay. And I'm not denying that Tony has concern for the public. In fact, I think he has great concern for the public. I just don't think the standard that's being applied is correct, in that he decides who gets a background check and who does not. That's not impartial. That's based on his personal feeling. He's even said it. He had a gut feeling about him.
That's his standard that he does.
But this is the standard that we go by, not his standard.
You can set his standard is he's still looking out for the benefit of the public. And this is how he has decided he's looking out for the betterment of the public.
There are procedures for that. You can't, somebody's being a pain to the public or to the city, so I'm going to, throw a bag over them and take them 300 miles away and drop them off. Now, to me, I'm doing what's best for the city, but that's not an appropriate action to take. We have procedure for
Well,
that.
that would be illegal.
Exactly.
This is not illegal. Anyone can run a background check.
I'm using an extreme
Yeah?
comparison so that we don't get into the minutia of it. What I'm saying is that we have codes and laws and statutes to follow. And clearly, it can't be spelled out any clearer, impartially. And this is not impartial when one person can decide on his own who gets a background check and who doesn't. How is that impartial, even if it's on its own personal standard? This is a standard that we have to live by.
And like you said earlier, we definitely disagree on the term impartiality.
So, yeah. I'm not arguing his intent. I believe his intent was honorable. I think it always has been, that he has had the interests of the city in mind. I just think the method is not right. Says their conduct in both their official and private affairs shall be above reproach. Which, I don't know about that statement. I think we'd all have issues with that at some point. Does anybody want to add to this?
No, but if we're gonna sit and then argue the word impartiality all night, I'm just gonna make a motion that violation number 2 is not substantiated, or unsubstantiated.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I will second it.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Move to vote.
Jones.
Yes.
Teagues.
Aye.
Tell.
Aye.
Anthony.
Nay. Violation of City Code 2.30, subdivision 2 has been found to be not substantiated. Allegation 3, violation of City Code 2.30, subdivision 3, is alleged that you exceeded your authority in your position as an EDA board member by ordering a background report on James Mattson from truthfinder.com without EDA board approval or authority.
think these arguments are all the same arguments. It just, we'll take that word out impartially. If he exceeded his authority or not.
So-
Maybe in the future, that will be, that he
future, yeah.
exceeded it.
So it's
Right now,
okay
it's not
that
in
a
writing.
board member go off on their own and take actions.
Right now, it doesn't say they can't. That's the thing.
And you won't know if anybody is anyhow. You won't know
I
if
mean-
anybody on the planning commission is looking to people if they ever owned a building before. You don't know if anybody on the police commission has ever had run-ins with police, that they're just gonna try to get on the police commission, so it's like you don't know. And you never,
They'll
and
do
you
a
never
background
will.
check on you, and you'll know.
And you'll never know. We can put all the rules that in place that we wanted to. You're not gonna know what somebody does in their house, on their own computer. Like I said, somebody from Slate's coming over here and I went and walked through town and talked to everybody in town.
You wouldn't know that if they didn't tell you, but he's admitted it. He's admitted to doing it several times.
True, but who said that exceeded the authority that he has?
It probably would have been worse if he would have done it and just brought the whole thing to the EDA and passed it out. But he didn't do that. He sent it to the city administrator, which is who I go to for all my advice or anything like that, is to the city administrator.
But we did take it to our attorney, and that's why we're sitting here.
Yeah, I know.
Because we have been advised by our attorney that these allegations are, well, we haven't been advised that they're substantiated because they haven't. That's what we're here to do, but the appearance of it, anyway, we have to make that determination, and that's why we're having this discussion. But our attorney felt that it was significant enough to bring it forward to a hearing. And we have admission on several occasions to obtaining background investigations without any authority from the EDA or the council. So what you're saying is that's okay.
What I'm saying is, it's not addressed, so how can you hold somebody to a level of accountability when there's no way for them to know and make a conscious decision to go against what is allowed?
This isn't Tony's first rodeo. He's been mayor, he's been on the council, he's
And has
been on
his-
EDA.
Has this been brought up before, that he would know?
Wow.
I'm just asking. I'm asking, because you know what? There's gonna be things we're gonna be held accountable for. And if it's not in black and white, how am I supposed to know? Even things in black and white, I'm not necessarily gonna have all memorized in my brain.
Well,
But
no,
if it's not there for me to even hopefully have read, how am I to know? How are any of the other EDA members to know to run a background check? He's not the one that shared it with anybody else other than the administrator.
well,
Comments?
he did leave it in the open, unsecured, for his employer to find on his employer's machine, who is, at the time, another EDA board member.
And then that EDA member is the one that shared it further.
But if he had never pulled it and hadn't left it there, it wouldn't have been available to share with anyone.
Okay, I'll give you that one. So then, if nobody else had had it, there still was no adverse action taken. I, that's not in this violation.
No,
This
it's not.
violation is just if he exceeded his authority or not. And I think if we would take, and I'm not suggesting we do this, but if we would take a private tally of the EDA board members, if they themselves think it would be wrong for them to pull a background check on people, I would almost bet they would all say, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But their opinion doesn't matter.
Yes, there does, just the same
No,
as
it's
Tony's.
ours to decide on this question.
But I'm saying, but they should be held to the same thing, and it's
Well, I
not
certainly
in
would agree with
writing.
that.
It's not in writing, so how are they all to know that it is above their authority?
Let's review exactly what it says.
Which are you looking at?
Subdivision 3, 2.30, subdivision 3. And they shall work in full cooperation with other public officials and employees unless prohibited from doing so by law or by officials recognized confidentiality of their work.
How did
So-
he not do that?
What that says to me is, you shall work in full cooperation. In other words, you need the board approval to do that,
That's not my interpretation.
because that's working in full cooperation. They all agree that this be done.
You can look that they work in full cooperation with other public officials, that he worked with the city administrator by getting him the background report and letting him decide to share it, which thankfully he did not do. He did what his responsibilities are. I'm just saying, there's not the clear guidance for the, and I'm pointing out there because there are a few members of the EDA out there which shall remain nameless, but they're sitting here wondering, okay, how am I supposed to know what I'm supposed to know that I should do or not do when it's not in writing? It's not illegal to pull a background check. Any citizen can do that. How are they supposed to know until we get them? And you know, when this, I don't know how old this code of conduct is, there's not a date on it. I mean, when it was made, it was probably before the world of getting, since you've been here. So since we can do background checks in that,
You're saying the code of conduct has been implemented since I've been here.
Yeah, it's been relatively recent.
because it doesn't say anything about social
Nope.
stuff, computer stuff, internet stuff, I mean, all of that stuff. None of that is even,
Just to refocus the council, hopefully streamline the deliberation. Like I said in my prior comments, I won't introduce anything different from that. You have to decide in this allegation, one, whether was it authorized by the board that Mr. Peterson obtained that in his capacity. Now, the application gives the EDA the authority to obtain credit information, but you have to make the determination whether the board authorized Mr. Peterson to obtain that report. That's the consideration you need to make based upon the evidence.
But is there not a difference between a credit report and a black background check?
The Fair Credit Reporting Act calls them consumer reports. So it's any information that's compiled from an individual regarding their criminal background, credit history, personal reputation, characteristics. I explained that earlier. That's what the definition, the consumer report agency is a business that compiles that information. The information that they compile is called a consumer report. That's why it's in parentheses in the allegations. And the report that was obtained was titled a background report. That's why it's listed as a background report. But parentheses, it's consumer report because that's what the definition of the Fair Credit Reporting Act defines that as.
So did he have EDA board authorization to pull that report?
I still am finding there's a difference, because we had a credit report. That's what the Matsons supplied, was the credit report, correct?
Yep.
Whoever I suppose. That, I'm having a problem differentiating why a person cannot pull a background check.
On a
That
personal
shows
basis-
different
On a
things.
personal basis, anyone can obtain a background report or credit on anyone. But the Fair Credit Reporting Act applies when it is used for employment decisions and lending decisions.
I know, but.
And that's different.
But this wasn't used for lending decisions. That part was tabled. That was not denied to them.
And you've already determined those, so focus on number 3.
Yes.
It's simply whether it was authorized or not.
And that's where does it say that they can't do it? That they're not authorized to do that as individual members?
Well, the Fair Credit Reporting Act,
No, let's not go back to that. Let's stay with
that's,
this.
and I just want to correct some inaccuracies. The Fair Credit Reporting Act spells out and defines what you can use certain things for. So when you say there isn't anything there, there is. There's a federal statute.
And it wasn't used for that purpose.
You need to make that determination.
We already did.
Correct. So whether it was the Fair Credit Reporting Act applied or not in your determination, this is a separate allegation. This is just whether it was authorized by the EDA. Okay, so
Yep.
I think what she's asking is, where does it say it had to be authorized by the E EDA?
to allow Mr. Peterson to obtain,
I think that's the question you're asking is, where does it say that he should have had EDA authorization?
you have to examine exhibit number 16 to make that determination. Because that is the loan application itself. And in my prior comments, I think my comment was that the application was to the Tracy Economic Development Authority.
The application, yeah, gave authorization to verify information contained in the application and to pull credit information, and it authorizes the EDA to do so, not Tony Peterson.
So how do we know? Is it the board chair? Is it the EDA director?
It would be the EDA as a whole. They would have to make a motion and pass it, and, you know, it would have to be authorized action.
There's a due diligence.
Well, here again, we could stay here till 10:30 like the other night, and I don't think any of us want to do that. So I'm going to make a motion that violation number 3 of the City Code 2.3 subdivision 3 is not substantiated.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
First and second. Any further comment or discussion? Go to vote.
Dave Teags,
Aye.
Mutel,
No.
Jerry Schoens,
Yes.
Tony Dimmers.
No.
That would fail for lack of a majority.
So we need to discuss more until...
No.
It fails.
It fails.
Majority.
It's unsubstantiated, essentially. Correct?
Correct.
Anything else?
Well, since the council did not substantiate any of the allegations, I don't believe the council needs to make a motion to reinstate Mr. Peterson because he was never removed, so he would just remain on the PDA board. So it would just be adjourning of the meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Any further closing discussion, questions? Move to vote.
Teags,
Aye.
Mutel,
Aye.
Schoens,
Aye.
Dimmers.
Aye. We're adjourned.